She said that Dad had been in an accident and that we needed to go to London and to get there as fast as we could.
I started to get it into my head that perhaps Jim wouldn't be around for forever, and that this was actually going to be something that was going to be final.
I was conscious until the time the ambulance arrived.
Please tell me he's not dead.
That I'd never be able to communicate with him again. I didn't want to think about that.
I could really lose my dad. He might not make it through this.
What freaks me out, and what reduces me to tears, actually, is the thought of other people seeing the accident.
Welcome to Do or Die. In the spring of 2019, when I began my YouTube channel, I was keen to interview both athletes and coaches. I kept seeing this powerfully built man coaching this lady on a regular basis at the athletics track where I also ran. A couple of months later, the interview was done with Jim.
You learn by your failures, you don't learn by your successes.
So, kind of expanding from that, how do you set your goals?
There are factors that you can't control, but you can mitigate.
A year and a half later, I got a message from Jim saying that he had been involved in an accident on the road while riding his bike. Jim came up with the idea of doing another interview to tell his story, his journey since the accident, told by family, friends, and of course, Jim himself.
He had abdominal injuries, he had burns, his liver and kidney were injured, he had multiple fractures in his spine. So I knew it was really serious.
I was more concerned about internal injuries and what might result in something killing him.
I just kept wondering how Jim would cope with a disability and how this would affect him mentally.
The first time I saw him was really difficult.
We weren't allowed to see him on the first night because he was obviously in quite a bad way. My stepmom managed to go and see him, and was obviously pretty devastated.
But how would such an active person cope with such a traumatic event?
There were so many times that I thought maybe he won't get through this, and
I wanted to hug him. I was afraid to touch him. He's so fragile. He's such a strong man always, but in such a fragile position.
No matter how many times we got the phone call to say that, his organs had failed or his heart had stopped, or, it just seemed to be this relentless fight.
This is just a little message from my hospital bed. I'm still an inpatient at King's College Hospital. Perhaps another few weeks until I get to the amputee rehab unit and actually get on with some real work. Lifting some weights, maybe, putting on a bit of muscle, getting back the sort of 10 kilograms that I've lost since I've been an inpatient.
Since you was in hospital, we actually discussed, albeit briefly, the fact that we would love to do a second part to this, basically, which is somewhat different from part one.
Decide you're going to do something that's realistic, not stupid or pie in the sky, and you achieve that.
He's always had some mad, crazy thing that he's doing, whether that be running a marathon, up a mountain.
He's encouraged me to get back into running. I start training for my own marathon now.
Jim is a very active, athletic and competitive individual.
I've PB'd at every distance while Jim's been coaching me. I ran my first marathon. That was something that I never thought I'd be able to do.
I first got to know Jim after I'd had a baby and I wanted to get back to running, and Jim was absolutely brilliant with me, putting in place a practical plan, but also being really encouraging and making sure we had a laugh as we ran along.
So like anything else, you learn by your failures, you don't learn by your successes.
The challenges mentally, physically, psychologically, with regards to your family support, friends and so forth. So we just want to cover all those sort of bases. But what I want to do, take it from the very start and put it in your own words.
The last time we met on video, I was a very fit guy.
So I've been competing since I was 12, left school when I was 16, joined the forces, lots of long-range reconnaissance stuff, that was my specialty, and got into sort of professional athletics after that.
I was also heavily involved in training other people. You know, we were talking about doing marathons and things like that, and my goals were to do a sub 250 again, which would be awesome. And in fact, you know, we're looking ahead to the London Marathon, I suppose. And for me, that never happened. The London Marathon being cancelled due to COVID, and then some sort of funny virtual thing happening. And you know, in July, I had a bad accident, got knocked off my bicycle, got run over by a 40-ton truck, and with all the injuries that went along with that.
I have known Jim for almost 20 years, and I met him through work. I'm also an orthotist, and I also work in orthotics and prosthetics. And Jim joined our team at King's College Hospital.
Our relationship beforehand was not great. We'd had a falling out, and I hadn't talked for about 3 years. About a year before the accident, we'd actually started talking again, and we were starting to repair our relationship.
He challenges everything, and he certainly challenged me and the rest of the team, so made you think about things at a level that you didn't normally consider in day-to-day work life.
When he had his accident, there was that moment of what happens if I can never talk to him again, to tell him that I love him, what happens if he's not here for all the important things.
Everyone knows Jim is remarkable, pig-headed, stubborn, but remarkable.
As a child, we'd look out the window at the end of the day and see Dad running home, or even doing sit-ups in the front room with me and my sister sat on his legs, or pull-ups on the door frame with me and my sister dangling off of him.
When we spoke again, I think it was September, wasn't it?
Yep.
And I was still in the critical care unit, and not in a great way psychologically speaking. And it was just wonderful to hear your voice. And it immediately brought me back to that previous environment at the track where, you know, we were so fired up to train, to be physical, you know, to enjoy life through movement. Mm-hmm. And it really buoyed me up. And that was another corner to turn. Mm-hmm. And I must thank you for that.
How do you deal with the initial sort of transition from knowing that, okay, you're now in a place where you've had a life-changing accident and experience that you're going to have to deal with? What sort of steps did you try to use to process the sort of environment and the realities that you found yourself now?
You count me in? 2, 1. Because I had polytrauma, I had tissue damage, the arm, the liver. My liver was obliterated. Different centres specialise in those things now. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the way the NHS is. They have sort of specialist centres for different kind of pathologies. Checking in with myself every day, mm-hmm. and trying to be a little bit more realistic about what I'm capable of, based on what I've done a couple of days beforehand, and based on what I want to do a couple of days in the future. I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful wife who comes in to see me every day.
The knock on the door from the police about 8:30, 9:15, and the police never knock on your door unless it's to tell you death. And I opened the door and started screaming and crying. No, 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 please don't tell me. Please don't tell me. I dropped to the floor. I grabbed hold of the officer's arm and said, he's not dead, he's not dead, he's not dead. Please tell me he's not dead. His arms off, his chest and abdomen are ripped off, his liver smashed to pieces. You've got to come now. I'd been told to prepare for the worst. So I started making the phone calls. And it was just awful. How do you deliver news? Because everyone wants to know what's happened, why. And at that time, you don't know, and you're having to say to people who love him dearly, this is serious, he's not going to make it. I was under absolutely no illusion that it was probably the last time that I was ever going to see him. And to live like that day to day, you just can't explain. My life was completely and utterly decimated. Watching your husband in that position, in a coma, not knowing if that 1 hour you'd been given is the last time you're ever going to see him, it's just quite frankly indescribable. It's the worst thing that can happen to anyone. It's a slow burn torture.
I'm very lucky to have an understanding consultant who lets me go home every weekend, and including lockdown times, which is great. So we'll just lock ourselves away at home and cuddle up, and just to really kind of enjoy our time together. And if nothing else, the positive thing about my accident is that we appreciate each other so much more.
In our last interview, you mentioned, when I did ask you the question, how do you feel someone who is trying to lose weight basically can go about doing it and stuff? And one of the things which kind of resonates with me is you said that losing weight is not just a physical thing, it's also a very psychological thing and stuff. So what I wanted to ask you is, with regards to your realization of your situation and stuff, were there issues? I'm sure there were, but I would like to hear from your point of view, issues with regards to your own self-image, your body image and stuff, because this has now changed dramatically from where you were before.
I would say actually that's the biggest hurdle I have to get over yet, is my view of self, my self-image. I've obviously lost the arm, and I've got a lot of scarring down the front of my trunk, which I'm very kind of sort of cautious about showing other people. Yeah, I think that has really kind of shaken me, I think, realizing that I'm never going to be that same physical person to look at that I was before. And that's something about my image as others see me, which I never really considered before. I take it for granted, and that's something I can't take for granted now.
I felt it was important to revisit the past on a number of occasions, seeing where Jim was at physically as well as mentally, then return to the present while looking towards the future. It seemed like a natural way to document his journey. And what about the practicalities of it and stuff? Because this is obviously, just for example, if you trying to set up the webcam and so forth like that, before it would have taken you 10 seconds to get it done. But now you have to take your time, because obviously you're maneuvering now with just the single hand to sort of, get your way around getting things done. So do you now find that you have to, because of just the way things are, you have to kind of plan ahead or give yourself a bit more time to get things done physically?
Whether it's because of my long history of PT, being fit, I actually found it relatively easy to adapt to the new circumstances. So previously I was right-handed, that's obviously not there now. And even with a working prosthesis, I still won't be as dexterous as I was previously with the right side. So I've converted to left-handedness, which is kind of interesting, actually. It's kind of an interesting thing to do. But yeah, so I've adapted to that. Things take a little longer. I changed my shoelaces and my trainers a couple of days ago to elastic ones, because it's just easy. And that took me about 40 minutes. But there's something in me that actually enjoys that kind of, there's a stubborn streak in me. So, I kind of like to address those challenges. It would drive me crazy if I wasn't I wouldn't say I'm a patient person, but I just like to be challenged, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's okay. In terms of the running side of things, obviously, in running, it's one of those activities where you spend maybe 60% of the time off the ground. And it's I suppose it's a theory born out through experience that
when I'm trying to, I may modify somebody's gait to reduce like injury risk or to refine their energy expenditure for some reason. I always try to get people to think about what they're doing before, during flight phase, before they land, because by the time you land, it's too late to modify anything, because you're then accepting load, and if you're accepting load badly, it's good putting a hell of a lot of sort of strange forces through your body, and all the kind of responses to that, compensations to that, are what leaks the energy out of the system. Naturally, with the one arm, you're kind of all over the place.
For several months and a worldwide pandemic, and Jim is out of a coma and running again.
So we're going to be doing a minute's worth of running, a minute's worth of walking, and just see how far we get. I think I'm faster walking than running now, to be honest with you. And Kerry here, behind the camera, is going to be far faster than me. Shit. A very emotional experience, but I was aware how badly I was running. And in the sort of 3 months since then, every run I do, I'm becoming more and more insightful as to what I'm doing wrong and how to sort of correct that.
Another chapter, another challenge is not something new to Jim.
It's clear to me that Jim doesn't just talk the talk, he actually walks the walk. He has a no-nonsense attitude. If you fall down, you get up again.
He will find new capabilities, new purpose, new reason.
If it had been anyone else in that accident and they had survived it, they would have given up. And he doesn't give up. He doesn't believe in giving up. And I think that's amazing. And how could you ever say that it wasn't?
He's the strongest person I know. He's superhuman.
It feels really good to be at hospital, to be alive, and to have this witnessed by the people that I really care about, my family, my wife, and to provide a bit of evidence to everybody that, no matter what befalls us in life, we can always come back from it and get back to a state where we're actually enjoying things again on our own terms.
Going back to the hand stuff, because what has been well publicised in the BBC reporting, Scotland reporting, and also in the BBC news coverage online, is that you want to, or you're attempting to raise enough finances through fundraising to get an operation surgery done to assist your mobility. So what is that operation or surgery, and why can't it be done in the UK? Or if it can, do the NHS do it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the handedness side of things, artificial limbs really aren't that sophisticated enough to replicate, the dexterity of the human body. Mm-hmm. And that's because we lack the sort of technology to feedback sensation from the limb. So it doesn't inform sort of motor control effectively. And even though there are sort of experimental level kind of developments in that area, we still are looking to shift dexterous movement from, in my situation, from the previously dominant side to the new dominant side, which of course is my stabilizing arm, the non-dominant arm. Mm-hmm. That's a work in progress, but I think
our brains are quite plastic, you know. If
Yeah.
we demand activity from a different part of the body, the brain is so plastic that actually, you know, you can learn new tasks
Yeah.
relatively quickly, actually, and then that's refined over time. So, you know, looking at the prosthetic side of things, I am being fitted for a prosthesis by the NHS, and that should be ready in about 2 weeks. And so all of that involves is a socket which is attached to the arm, and then, and then an elbow joint and a wrist, and then some sort of end effector, which is basically what the hand does.
Yeah.
But in my case, you know, I'm actually going for a little hook, a sort of split hook like Long John Silver.
Right.
And that's because those were developed over 100 years ago by an American Civil War kind of veteran, actually. Because what we're doing with the split hook is actually simplifying, you know, the action of the hand down to 2 little pincers.
Right.
Okay, so that's, you know, you're getting rid of all the complexity of the hand, because that's very difficult to kind of process if you make an artificial hand with all these moving fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then because of the feedback you get through vibration through the artificial limb, that's actually a form of sensory feedback. So you can actually use that very effectively to control what the output is.
Right.
In other words, how you use the cables and the device to get the hand to move. All right, the aim of the game here is to put this arm on. I've got quite a short arm, as you can see. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a sleeve on, and that's made of silicone. So you just pop that onto the end of the arm and then roll it up like a tube kind of thing. Sometimes it feels kind of weird. So I take it nice and easy. It's got to be lined up right, because that pin that you can see now, which is like a ratchet pin at the bottom, now that's going to do something special with the artificial arm. Okay, so that's got to be in the right alignment, and it's got to be the right way around and everything. So it'll take a bit of time getting it right. Tum-ty-tum-ty-tum. And then we're good to go. You can see the pin at the end there. Alright, time for the arm. So, as you can see, the arm, it's got loads of straps attached to it. And the idea of the straps is to hold the arm in place, again because I've got a short arm, and also to move the elbow and move the hand, or the hook in this case. Now what I'm doing here is it takes a bit of time to get that pin lined up. So the pin at the end of the liner there, it's got to be lined up, and it looks like I've managed it there in about 30 seconds, which is actually pretty good. Now, as you can imagine, when you're moving the artificial arm around on your natural arm, you get a lot of rubbing. So what I'm doing here is I'm tucking my t-shirt in, taking a bit of time, because it can cause a lot of blistering when you're using the arm, if you're not careful. So if you take care while you're putting it on. And now, as you can see, I'm just moving the straps around to the other side of my body. There's an awful lot of straps there, and each one of them does a specific thing. There you go. So here, this is one hell of a fiddle. What I'm trying to do is get that buckle done up underneath my opposite arm. With one hand. And it can be slightly frustrating. But as you can see, the arm is actually quite stable now, and the harness will make it even more stable on the arm. It's a lot to wear, and it's a little bit heavy. You get used to it quite quickly. Okay, we're good to go by the look of it. Oh no. Sometimes I get this done in 10 seconds flat. Bit of stage fright here, bit of panic. Unfortunately, due to my advancing years, my short sight is quite poor, so I'm sort of guessing here right now. Alright guys, we're good to go. There you go. Right, let's see if we can get this arm to work. So there's a bit of shoulder shrugging going on there. The black strap at the front there allows me to lock and unlock the elbow. That's something I added quite recently. Come on, there you go. All right. Happy. So the action of the end effector, the hand bit, is very limited.
Right.
And for my job, for my profession in orthotics and prosthetics, you really need a lot of dexterity in the hand to be able to assess patients safely and effectively, to collect information, to manufacture devices and then fit them and manage them and so forth.
Yep.
So really, I need something with a little bit more kind of sophistication in terms of the number of digits, so you can manipulate things. You understand what you're doing through sensation, through sensory feedback.
Yep.
Without the need to look at it all the time, because you need to look at the patient, you need to look at other sort of potential risks in the environment, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And also the output as well. You want to grasp, you want to kind of alter your hand shape to the shape of the patient's limb, for instance, or some object that you want to pick up. So what we're looking at is a multi-grip hand.
Yeah.
Now, my problem is that the stump, the sort of what I've got left of my arm is about 15 centimeters long. It's very short. And so you've got a long arm, the full length of the arm. Any movement here, any relative movement is going to be amplified at the end. Yes. And no matter how accurate you are down to here, you're going to lose a lot of accuracy. I know for a fact that that's going to be a real challenge. So very early on, I've started that conversation with my plastic surgeon who treated me at King's.
Yeah.
And that's why we're looking actively at osseointegration now.
Right. Okay.
That is a surgical technique, although it's been practiced for about 40 years now, particularly in the upper limb, it's still very experimental. And the kind of sophistication in terms of sensory feedbacks and feed forward motor control of the hand is still very early development as far as actually practical application to patients concerned. And you're probably looking at about 20 people in the world that have had this done.
Do you think that your professional standing has assisted you in any way?
I suppose at this point in my life, I've done a lot. I've got a load of influences in my life that I can draw on. As a service person, you do go through adversity and you learn to adapt and compensate for your own weaknesses, and you learn pretty quickly in your training that you are a frail and you're a frail individual with weaknesses, and part of your response to the stresses of training are to learn to compensate and forgive yourself for any failures you have and then move on from that. And also allow yourself to be supported by other people. The commando spirit is about it's basically keeping your chin up through adversity, is considering other people before yourself and allowing others in your team to look after you and trust in those. The insight, technical knowledge from my professional background has really helped. One, because I have a good understanding of what's available and what's possible in the future as far as sort of technical kind of innovation goes. I've got a lot of friends in the professions, prosthetics, orthotics, physiotherapy, medicine, who I can draw support and advice from. And also my insight from working with patients as well. I'm now a patient, and I'm used to really treating people rather than problems in the first instance. So one, you understand the person and what they want to achieve with their life and what barriers they have to that. And then it's really sort of talking it through and negotiating how we can sort of get over those hurdles. And if we can't get over those hurdles directly, then maybe thinking of some way where we can, do a bit of a kind of body swerve and get around those problems and get to the goal without having to climb Everest. We just take the ring road, right? My sisters set up a GoFundMe page with Kerry's help, and they set about trying to think of ways in which I could perhaps return to the way I was before. So I think by the time I woke up, these sort of mechanisms were kind of quite well established already. I was in a coma for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic to experience how much support I was receiving, and the love, really. You know, it wasn't about the material stuff, it was about the love.
Of course.
You know, and that's really brought me through the dark days to where I am now, actually. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people. And secondly, understand that you have to experience that grief in order to move beyond it, rationalize it, and learn from it. It's part of your body's adaptive process. So, you know, don't try and lock it away. I've been through a lot of a traumatic experience of my life in the services and that, and I have used a denial as a tool in order to get through it and consider myself as having to do that to continue existing as a human being, if you like. But it always comes back at you eventually. And you know, in this occasion, I've had to kind of face up to huge changes in my life. And it's been a huge benefit, actually, of me just accepting the fact that I've got to deal with that. I've just got to experience the grief and the depression associated with that. Accept the support of those around you, and you know, come through it. And I think be appreciative of what that bad experience has taught you. You know,
Favorite sports person, and why did they appeal to you?
Laura Muir, I think, actually. She's got a great attitude to sport. She's literally been like running since she was a little kid and did pretty well at it. And only when she got to uni, she kind of realised she was pretty special. And you know, she's got on the rest of her life. And sport plays a part in that. Okay, she's right up there, but not because she's obsessed with the, you know, the activity. It's more about just including activity and sport as part of her life. And I really love that.
So I reached out to Laura's management, and after some initial sort of inquiries, and asked or related the story to them.
Hi Jim, it's Laura Muir here. I just wanted to say a friendly hello. I hope you're keeping well and you're staying positive. I'm really sorry to hear about your accident. It must have been incredibly difficult to go through, and no doubt very difficult to go through now. But I think myself and just others want to let you know that, you know, we're all thinking of you. You've got a great team around you. You know, please reach out if you're needing, you know, any support or help with anything. You know, just trying to stay as positive as best you can. I've heard that you're quite competitive too, so you know, hopefully you can find some things, you know, to keep you entertained, keep that competitive spirit going. At, you know, I hear like you're a keen athlete with things, so yeah, just trying to stay positive. We're all thinking about you, and I really hope that you have a speedy recovery and you're feeling well and happy soon.
I wanted to get it done so much because I wanted you to have that surprise element of it, because obviously you didn't know anything about it, sort of thing.
Well, I think you know, I immediately burst into tears, mate. I've cried more in the last couple of weeks, probably, than I've had done in my entire lifetime, to be honest with you, just because I'm overwhelmed by how wonderful people are. You know, as far as Laura goes, you know, it was everything I expected her to kind of be as just a normal person. You know, somebody who enjoys her running. She's got a natural, phenomenal talent, and it's just a kind of an extension of her as a personality. And it's not the only thing in her life, which is really important. I think we're surprised when sports people do show a bit of charisma and sort of show they're human. You know, is it Marcus Rashford?
Yeah.
You know, with the kids' school meals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's just an intelligent, caring person, frankly. We're all bowled over by the fact they can actually string two words together, you know, be kind of eloquent, even though he's a working class footballer.
Yeah.
You know, hey, why should we be surprised? It's just fantastic. Yeah. So, you know, it's not a shock, but it is a shock when somebody looks you in the eye through the video and tells you that they care about you. That's a big deal. You know, and that's kind of why I've been crying so much lately.
Yeah.
Through happiness, really, you know. But yeah, just to experience that kind of feedback from people.
What would you say has been your lowest point in all this, your very lowest point, if you can pinpoint one?
And the lowest point was where I had a prognosis that my liver was damaged beyond recovery and my kidneys were completely knackered. So I'll be on dialysis for at least 3 times a week for the rest of my life. Potentially not being able to leave the hospital. On top of that, you've got obviously the physical kind of damage to my left leg. I had very bad nerve damage to my left leg. And losing the arm, and obviously the physical wasting as well. After 6 weeks in the coma, and the type of feed they give you, it's very sort of carb rich, but there's no protein in it. So your body starts eating itself. It's a catabolic state you go into. So essentially, my muscle just disappeared. I went down to 40 kilograms. So, you know, that weakness associated with that.
Yeah.
And obviously, I hadn't gone through a process of actually living that consciously. I'd gone through 6 weeks of being asleep, thinking I was dead. I woke up and I've got this new body.
Yeah.
You know, without any kind of lead-in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then I had a wee tickly cough because I've been on a ventilator and then trachea. So what they do is they cut you in the throat and put a pipe in.
Yeah.
And that had kind of, my throat now is still not, I'm still 100%. You know, I've got a bit of a sexy voice still. You know, it left me with a bit of a cough.
Yeah.
So immediately the medical staff interpreted that as COVID. I had a COVID test, which it took 6 days to process that. And in the meantime, a doctor comes and sits in my bed and says, look, you could well have COVID here.
Right.
Because the ward was full of COVID patients already.
Right.
And he said, you know, you might not, you're going to have to be really brave. You might not make it through this one. One compensation I learned was to just not try and overthink things. I would hear that sort of bad news and I would just really put it at the back of my mind, you know, and just deal with what I was dealing with on that day.
Finally, in your own home, how did that feel like coming home? It must have felt good.
I'd stopped believing that I was going to get discharged. I couldn't cope with that prospect of going home almost because it seemed so far in the future. I had to do so many things, prove myself in so many different ways. You know, to actually let somebody home was a big deal. Yeah. So the first day I was home, I came in a wheelchair and that was just incredible just to be at home. And now I just appreciate it every day that I wake up beside my wife and, you know, hobble around the living room, look out the window. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
It's indescribable, frankly. You know, I've gone through quite an ordeal and I've learned a lot from that. And that's informed perhaps the thought processes I had before, you know, but I've become more knowledgeable now, I think. I've got more insight. And so what I'm thinking of doing now in terms of sort of academia and career, I'm going back to work. So that's that. I'll hopefully to some extent continue with my running coaching. You know, that hasn't changed. But you know, I'm much more interested in the motivation side of things now, even more than before. You know, one of the insights I've had since I joined the forces was that, you know, the fundamental kind of a requirement to do anything is motivation. You know, it's actually to get off your arse and do it. You know, and I want to have a better kind of understanding of that in people. So I'm doing a master's starting in the summer. I've just been accepted to do an MSc in sport and exercise psychology. And I'm really looking forward to that. So that's one thing I think that's I've profited from is, you know, wanting to understand more about the reason why people constantly get knocked down and get up again.
First of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to and the suggestion to film this part 2 of the interview, of your journey since your accident and so forth, because I found it very valuable to do it, but also to kind of like, when things like this happen to people you know, people you've spoken to, it makes you assess and look at yourself as well and see where you're at with regards to how you process things and how you deal with things. And it's giving a lot of value to myself, to people around me and stuff, because I've spoken to so many people about this issue and stuff, and yeah, it's been very emotional as well. At some points I have my low points with it, and then at other times I'm thinking, we have to keep moving and we have to keep the spirit going, because that's the human spirit and that's the human element of knowing that there's always going to be things that we have to deal with, but we have to deal with it.
About 3 or 4 weeks ago, Jim's came back to work, albeit remotely, and not seeing patients yet, but it's just been so fantastic to have him back, get straight back involved with the team, and really see the Jim that we all know and love at work. There's still a long way for him to go, to get back here and to get back to seeing patients face to face. I do truly believe that that's possible, and with help, support, and hopefully a new arm, I really see that as a feasible prospect for Jim. There's lots of different technologies out there that we can use to help him to do that, and it's really exciting to see how we can help him return to his normal day-to-day duties.
It's been amazing. This is probably the happiest I've ever seen him.
I hope he finds happiness and peace in himself, and I hope that he can inspire other people.
Life goes on, and it certainly will go on for Jim.
I know my dad is something that not many people are. He's he can recover like nobody else. I think this is just a new challenge for him. At the end of the day, he'll always be my dad. And just happy to see him alive again.
He'll keep going until he gets where he wants to go. And I love him.
I'm not a widow, and that's something I'll be truly thankful for. And I hope he sees how loved he is by so many people.
The very best with regards to any rehab and treatment going forward, and obviously with the course that you're doing in the summer as well. But initially, any sort of physical treatment that you get, and the support of your family, your sister, as well as other people who have been inspirational to you, I'm really happy that they've been there and stuff, because oftentimes when traumatic things happen to us, we feel alone, but these individuals and groups make us know that, it's we suffer together as a unit, we don't suffer individually and stuff. So I'm sure you're very grateful for them.
Okay, Theo, thanks very much, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem.
And when I was in the hospital and talking to you in September, I really wasn't sure that we'd ever meet again.
Yeah, no.
And even though obviously we're meeting virtually, it's awesome, mate.
Nah, no problem, Jim. All the best to you, mate, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much.